Well, I didn't have running back as a need for Penn State, but hey, there is nothing wrong with going and getting more depth and a whole lot of talent to go along with that depth.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Penn State fans? Welcome into a live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily source for all things Penn State sports. My name is Seyko, and I'm your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. As we are talking about a flurry of moves here, we're going to, of course, get to the live chat. I already see the comment section is active. Want to know your thoughts, your questions. But Dejuan Lane and Tyseer Denmark entering the portal. Whoa, that was kind of surprising because they had said they were going to stay. But Penn State adds former Ohio State running back James Peoples, not one, not two, but three defensive linemen in the past 24 hours here. We're going to begin with the additions, and then we'll get to the subtractions and what that impact ultimately means. I have some thoughts just outside of, the personnel impact of Lane and Denmark. But Peoples, look, I was very much content with a 1-2 punch of Quinton Martin and Carson Hansen. Quinton Martin can do a lot of things. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's quick. He's fast. And Carson Hansen is your power back. But James Peoples definitely has the best home run ability of the bunch. This not only improves the depth chart, but gives you somebody else that just adds competition, that gives you a lot more leverage at a spot that, just by the nature of the sport, I would say the two position groups that kind of have the most impact in terms of attrition, where you want a lot of depth, and that's running back and offensive line. You need tons of offensive linemen, and Penn State's certainly going to be looking there. But to go and get James Peoples, a former Ohio State running back, a top recruit not too long ago. He's got multiple years of eligibility. This is a win across the board. James Peoples, the criticism is going to be that, well, he's overrated, that he's not as good as people make him out to be, because he never settled in this past season for Ohio State. He was supposed to be that lead guy. And that's what I'm going to watch for here. Is this a product of, it just didn't really materialize, the running back situation there, because they ultimately went with a true freshman in Bo Jackson, but he was still giving you over 5.5 yards per carry. I think Peoples didn't have the complete game that goes along at the running back spot. And the hope is that whomever the next running backs coach is for Penn State, because that's still unknown, but that's also a point of emphasis here too, is that Matt Campbell and Taylor Mauser and everybody else that is kind of filling in until Penn State officially names a running backs coach, because I'm pretty sure I haven't missed that. But Peoples, he wasn't necessarily the best blocker. I would say if I have the biggest criticism of him, it's his ability to be a pass blocker, but he's got the home run threat. This is, if you're worried about, hey, Nicholas Singleton didn't have a great senior season, but you still want that big playability, James Peoples is absolutely at the top when you talk about these three, between Quinton Martin and Carson Hansen included. So Peoples can be used as a pass catcher in addition to Quinton Martin. You won't ask Peoples to necessarily be the guy that stays in and block. No. That is going to be Carson Hansen and Quinton Martin. There is a use here for all three of them. And there actually is precedent. Iowa State in 2024, you're probably thinking, okay, well, there's going to be a competition and they'll probably settle in on a 2-person running back committee, which is fair to assume and very well could be the case. But I'm kind of led to believe here, you don't just retain Quinton Martin by accident. You don't go out of your way into the portal to get somebody like James Peoples. There's the long-term outlook here, because he's got 2 years of eligibility. That's important, but you can utilize all three of them. You can have a 3-man running back committee. Again, Martin and Peoples can be used as pass catchers. Carson Hansen is your short yardage. Honestly, he can catch the football out of the backfield too. It's not just selective to Peoples and Martin, but you can utilize all three. It's important when that spot, it will put so much wear and tear on a player. So Iowa State did this in 2024. So Taylor Mauser knows this, and it's not just Matt Campbell and it was the old offense. No, Taylor Mauser has run this where there was, a separation, but nearly all three running backs on that Iowa State team had almost over 100 carries. The third running back had 93. It was a pretty fairly even split between Carson, Hansen, Abu Sama, and Jackson, their third running back. The split carries were 150 to 130 to 90, basically. That is a pretty even split, honestly, in my opinion, where we saw it really condense to Singleton and Allen, Singleton and Allen, Singleton and Allen. I'm under the impression we'll see all three running backs this season because they are all good at different things. You need them for a variety of things. You need Peoples to use the speed to break away from the defense and get you some of those big play runs. You have Quinton Martin, who can do a little bit of everything. He'll be used primarily as the pass catcher, so to speak, out of the backfield if I had to choose any one of the three. And then Carson Hansen is your touchdown machine, your short yardage guy, because he's 6'2", 225 pounds. Good luck stopping that at the goal line. And who's to say you can't? I tried to say this with Andy Kotelnicki and Mike Yursich once upon a time, that you should be running 21 and 22 personnel, meaning that you have two running backs on the football field, or you just run 20, okay? Maybe you don't even need a tight end in that case. The point is, why not have Peoples and Martin on the football field at the same time? Peoples and Hansen, Hansen and Martin, because you have the leverage here. These guys are too talented to just sit on the bench. You don't bring him in by accident. He is not a depth piece. He is there to play. He is there to get snaps, but you also have Hansen and Martin that factor in. Outstanding move for Penn State. I like it. There's nothing to not like about this move. And there's a reason he was at Ohio State, right? I want to talk about some of the other players here that Penn State picked up in the portal. Notably, Keanu Williams, because the second I stopped recording with Brian Smith, the transfer portal expert here at the Locked On Podcast Network, Keanu Williams happened to commit to Penn State. Arguably one of the better gets for Penn State now. The catch is he only has one more year of eligibility. You would like him to be around for multiple seasons. But Keanu Williams, Penn State was looking for size on the interior of the defensive line, and they got it. 6'5", 320 pounds, space eater. He started in 11 games last season. He has familiarity with Ikaika Malloy coming over. That's okay. We don't need to read into that anymore. Malloy was the defensive coordinator at UCLA. That's the connection here. Keanu Williams comes over to Penn State all the way from California, right? So, but he doesn't just take up space. He will make plays. He nearly had 40 tackles as a defensive tackle. Defensive tackles don't normally do that. They don't pad the stats. That's the linebackers. That's the edge rushers. The guys in the middle, they do a lot of the dirty work. And that's precisely but Keanu Williams takes it a step further, where you're getting someone that's just disruptive and helps the linebackers make plays, but he'll also make a play for himself. This guy, he's a one tech, 2-eye, wherever you need him for Penn State. He's versatile. He can be a 4-3 defensive tackle, or honestly, line him up over. He's about 20 pounds short, but if you need to move in odd man front situations, he's versatile. The point is, he is versatile. Okay, but if we're talking long term, we have Armstrong Nnodim, who's coming over from Oklahoma State. Limited sample size, okay, but he's got 3 years of eligibility remaining. He's going to be a smaller defensive tackle that I imagine Penn State's going to try to build out here, because he's listed around 290 pounds. But I wonder if Penn State maybe tries to get some size there, because he's a little too big to play defensive end, even in this defense. But he had 2 tackles for a loss. He actually started 4 games late in the season, but he's got 3 years of eligibility. So this is a developmental depth piece for Penn State. So you have Keanu Williams that will pass the torch to Nnodim. And honestly, one of my favorite additions as well here, somebody with upside, somebody that you bring in with multiple years of eligibility, and that's Alexander McPherson, who was a defensive end edge defender at Colorado. He gets after the quarterback. 6'6", 240 pounds. So the weight isn't there. I mean, yes, he's a defensive end, right? I'm not going to be critical of what he actually weighs, but we're talking about size on the defensive line. Penn State had some defensive ends in the rotation that were 6'1", 6'2". He's 6'6". Okay, McPherson had 6 quarterback hurries in a rotational role. So you have that kind of efficient production. You already see what McPherson is capable of. So he's a long, athletic defensive end. I mean, literally with a 6'6" frame. This is somebody that can make an impact this season. I imagine he'll still be a backup because you have, or just a co-starter, someone who will factor into the rotation. But year 2 is where you will really see him turn the corner. But I like that group so far of Max Granville, Yvonne Kamaju, and Alexander McPherson so far as the 3 main defensive ends at this point in time. But Penn State, I still think, needs some more resources at defensive line, definitely at linebacker. We've talked about that a ton. Front 7 was always going to be the biggest issue going into this offseason, regardless of who Penn State retained and who Iowa State was which Iowa State players were going to follow over. You're going to have to fill those needs outside of Penn State and Iowa State. Okay, so those are the latest additions. How about some surprise subtractions? Tyseer Denmark and Dejuan Lynn, who had recommitted to Penn State, are now entering the transfer portal. Does anybody's word mean anything at this point in time? Well, we're going to discuss that next here on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The college football playoff is here, and FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get in on the action every single game day of the playoffs. Because right now, every college football playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost waiting for them in the app. And here's why you're going to love it. You get to use the profit boost on the bets you already feel good about. So you can go with the favorite when you think a team controls the matchup. You can take a shot on an underdog if you feel like an upset's coming. Or you can build a parlay around the players and moments you think decide the game. And then you apply the profit boost and go after even bigger winnings. And when you win, FanDuel pays you out instantly, which is perfect for playoff football. FanDuel is the best place to get in on the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com and the FanDuel app to get your college football playoff profit boosts every game day. Again, that is FanDuel. I want to thank everybody for joining me here on a Tuesday night to talk more transfer portal moves. I think, what is this, our 3rd, 4th, 5th consecutive live show? I do not do these live shows without all of you. So we're definitely going to get reactions in the live chat as well. Lots of people are disgruntled, and I totally understand that. Frustrated, right? Because you give your word and you walk back on it with Dejuan Lynn and Tyseer Denmark here. I wouldn't say, look, I'm not going to be angry about it. It's disappointing. I thought there was still promise with both of those players, especially Dejuan Lynn, right? And I think that's the general reaction as I've glanced over at the live chat so far. People are kind of giving their reactions already. Okay, so his quote, so Thomas points this out, rather drown with my guys before I ever jump ship, Dejuan Lynn. And now he jumps ship. Stay loyal and don't be shy about the competition. A lot of things could go into this. I was just talking to some people about it and saying, okay, is this money? Is this playing time? It could be anything. It's also the fact that these are 19, 20-year-old college football players at the end of the day, and you have unlimited player movement. And the NCAA doesn't crack down on any of this stuff. There is all agent-to-agent communication, coach communication, right? There are a lot of ways to get in contact with a player that doesn't break the rules of negotiations or whatever have you. Kind of blanking on what words I want to describe this, but there are other ways to offer a player without doing it illegally, doing it against the rules of the sport. So who knows what ultimately happened? If there's a team that needs a safety, Dejuan Lynn can start at a lot of places. Dejuan Lynn probably would have been at a minimum a co-starter for Penn State last season. I tabbed him as a starter. I thought it was a big deal that he was coming back. And same thing with Tyseer Denmark. I thought it was a big deal because I don't think that Marcus Hagans ended up giving Tyseer Denmark the best start to his career. I think that Noah Polley would have been able to come in and gave him the tangible resources to start to become a more reliable receiver. Was Denmark going to be a starter? But he definitely could have been in the rotation. What it means is, Penn State's going to run a lot of defensive backs. So the instant solution is try to get Jeremiah Cooper, Iowa State defensive back. He played corner. He's versatile. He can play safety. Lane and Denmark, not ideal. Not good to see two players kind of walk back their commitments. Does anybody's word mean anything these days? But they're also not loyal to Matt Campbell. Safeties coach is gone. Dion Broomfield. Okay, yes, Terry Smith is still there, but Terry Smith is the cornerbacks coach. Notice the cornerbacks that stuck around between Jameer Joseph, Darius Dixon, and Adavian Collins. That's Terry Smith. There is a difference between the cornerbacks and the safeties where they were loyal to Anthony Poindexter. My assumption is that Dejuan Lane and King Mack, who were safeties, probably go to Tennessee or go somewhere else. But there's the personal loyalty factor. You are loyal to an assistant coach. So Anthony Poindexter is no longer there. Talking with some other mutuals, we just came to the conclusion that NIL, the loyalty above all else, is an NIL paycheck. I don't know if that's specific for Dejuan Lane, but it seems like a majority of cases that there is no loyalty to a university. There is no loyalty to establishing a legacy. It's to how much money can I make as quickly as possible. So, but a lot of that speculation. I'm trying to speak for the entirety of the transfer portal. That's not even just subjective to Dejuan Lane and Tyseer Denmark at this point in time. It could have been competition related. Penn State loaded up at secondary because there were a lot of Iowa State secondary players. That's where Matt Campbell went. But Lane wasn't in his final year. He had multiple years of eligibility remaining. I'm not sure. People are catching up on the news. I just read that Dejuan Lane went into the portal. That stinks. Like, I get it. It probably is all money related. It wasn't Terry saying you're benched next year. And Terry doesn't have influence there. He's the cornerback. I mean, this was a player that you wanted to keep in Dejuan Lane, but Penn State, like I said, can recover. They just go and get Jeremiah Cooper. And I want to refresh social media in the event that I don't miss that. I don't miss the breaking news. So, but that is college football these days. It is difficult to get excited about things in college football at this point in time because they change on a dime. Loyalty is limited. It's few and far between. I guess that's why it's so gratifying when it does happen, when you see a player go out of their way to stay somewhere. But what is that influence, right? Penn State's paying people too. Penn State's prioritized who they wanted to keep and negotiated new NIL deals. As far as a player, personnel, X's and O's standpoint, Penn State will be fine. There are plenty of wide receivers that I want Penn State to get. And Tyseer Denmark, I don't know how much playing time he would have gotten unless he really took a massive step forward, especially with who Penn State's going to be targeting. Rico Scott, Harrisburg native, was a 4-star that went to Alabama. He's in the portal. I guess a former 5-star from New Jersey, Quincy Porter, just entered the transfer portal. James Peoples, do you want to do any recruiting? Are you able to recruit any fellow teammates there? Penn State's certainly going to want to bring him in. And that would have been tough for Denmark. So I think Dejuan Lane might have had other opportunities elsewhere. Tyseer Denmark probably limited and probably got concerned with playing time. And I imagine the coaches had an honest conversation with him. Yes, James Peoples. James Peoples is in the running back rotation. So Coy Parrish, I would say does not. I would say that he does not end up at Penn State. It seems like Oregon is going to. Guess what? NIL. That's going to be a major factor there. Dylan Thieneman I talked about this on another show. There's kind of already precedent here that Oregon tries to target that. Coy Parrish isn't necessarily under the radar, but was playing at Minnesota. Thieneman was at Purdue. So I think people see where I'm going with this, is that you have players, you have safeties, particulars that are basically lost in the shuffle because they're at middling or bottom of the barrel Big Ten programs. And the idea is that, okay, if we bring you to Oregon, we'll turn you into a superstar, like a bona fide superstar, because we'll give you the supporting cast and we'll be able to utilize you in different ways. So, but Coy Parrish will not end up at Penn State. I can guarantee you that, even though it'd be very cool. Focus on, if you want Penn State to kind of get that that superstar player or somebody that nobody's expecting them to get, I would focus on wide receiver. I would focus on wide receiver, maybe even a little defensive line as well. So we can talk more Quincy Porter on the other side of the break. So we got another break. We'll get back into the live chat and also talk about where Penn State is trying to target, what other players they're going after in the portal. Are there any concerns that Penn State might lose any more current players? That's all coming up next here on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is also brought to you by Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a great resource, a great tool to help manage your finances, because let's be real, managing your finances can feel overwhelming. Between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month, it's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? Now, that's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and it cancels your unwanted subscriptions. It'll monitor your spending, and it will help you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. You will be shocked when Rocket Money, for example, it shows you what you're paying for, specific subscriptions that you've completely forgot about, and it will help you save the money. And you have the automatic transaction categorization. Now, that's a game changer. You can finally see exactly where your money is going each month. You can set budgets, goals, get personalized insights, receive real-time alerts for larger transactions, upcoming bills, and low balances. It even consolidates your checking, your savings, your loans, and your investments into a single dashboard, so you get a clear view of your entire financial picture. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That is rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Our one final segment here on the live show. So thoughts, general, we can take this conversation in a lot of different directions. I still like Penn State's moves in the transfer portal and what they've done to this point. I have limited criticisms, right? The two criticisms that I think I have right now, or questions. I don't even know that they're criticisms, because nothing is final. So much can change day to day. You could lose, you could win. Okay. What I'm questioning right now is, do you get this front seven to where it needs to be? Do you get enough defensive tackles? Do you get enough edge defenders to where, yeah, you don't have the same issues that Iowa State had for the past couple of seasons, where that defense, you could run the ball at them because they weren't that stout up front. They are getting defensive linemen, so now you need linebackers. You lost Matt Campbell. And I know they got some good players at Iowa State, but I'm looking for 1 to 2 more, and maybe even a starting caliber, not just a depth guy. I feel like the Iowa State guys that they brought over are more of the 2 deep, so that you don't have a lot of attrition at that spot. Remember, Tony Rojas isn't going to be immediate. He might be, right? The optimistic outlook is that he's ready for game 1. He's good to go. But even still, he's going to have to shake off a lot of the rust. This is another offseason where he's going to miss spring football. So with that in mind, you get a few linebackers from Iowa State. So it's Tony Rojas and the Cyclones. No, that's not a band. That's Penn State's linebacker room. I would like to see them get one more key player, somebody that can be your first or second. And I should throw in Alex Tatch. That's not fair of me to say. So Alex Tatch, thank goodness that he's still there. But he also got injured at the end of the season. What is the nature of his injury? So the Penn State linebackers that are the guys to know, Tony Rojas and Alex Tatch, they're banged up. And I hope that we see Tatch in spring football, but until we get that confirmation, we don't have that at the moment. And then you have the Iowa State linebackers. So Caleb Bacon is actually ranked fairly high, but I'm looking for another 3-down linebacker. Those are at a premium. If you can get one, great. You still need more defensive linemen. They've done well at defensive tackle. They're still trying to recruit more. You need more edge defenders too, if you're Penn State. Wide receiver, you just lost a wide receiver. So I would also think about trying to, I'll go back to Jeremiah Cooper. Jeremiah Cooper was a former Iowa State defensive back. He played cornerback, but I think at this point you need him in the room, and maybe you can convert him to, he just has great coverage skills. You can play him at safety. Okay. Penn State's going to run a bunch of different coverages, a bunch of different hybrid defenses. You need somebody that's versatile. With Dejuan Lane going into the portal, now Jeremiah Cooper becomes a focus. Okay. So that's where Penn State's primary focus is at this point. Front seven still, finding a replacement for Dejuan Lane, wide receiver. We love wide receiver, right? It hasn't been the joke of college football at Penn State for a period of time. No. They still have LeVar. I imagine that's a typo. Arrington Jr. That is LeVar Arrington Jr., everybody. LeVar Arrington II, actually. His dad is still very heavily involved at Penn State. I don't know that LeVar Arrington II needs to make an announcement, but he's in the rotation. I'm eager to see what step he takes forward, because Arrington came into Penn State very undersized. He was 210 pounds. That's not going to cut it at linebacker. So it's not an issue with talent. It's not fair to put him out on the football field if he's undersized at this point. You have to be at least 230 to play linebacker in the Big Ten. And even that's undersized. We saw Dakari Nelson, who hit the portal. Again, Penn State's lost Keon Wiley, which is why I'm harping on linebacker, because they've lost Keon Wiley, Amari Campbell, and I just said it. Gosh. Nelson, Dakari Nelson. Geez. A little bit just blanking there, right? I've done a ton of shows today. But they've lost a number of linebackers, and it's great that you get some of the Iowa State guys to come over. But with the injury to Rojas, what is Alex Tatch's immediate status? Is he going to play spring ball, right? I don't know how serious that injury is going into the bowl game. Arrington would be a player that you want to tab as a potential breakout, right? You want to see him take a step forward. So spring football for him, I'm glad somebody mentioned Arrington II, because spring football is going to be huge, huge for number 11. And I imagine Matt Campbell's going to keep that tradition. That wasn't a James Franklin thing. That's a Penn State thing. So keep an eye on that, because Arrington wears the number now, but who's going to be that next guy, right? And we won't know that for a long time. Oh, Campbell versus Franklin, competition versus a safety net, warm and fuzzy motivational quotes. Campbell is definitely going to create a competitive environment. That's the impression that I've gotten, is that one way or another. And a lot of these players know, in competition, iron sharpens iron. You need competition. I do feel like with James Franklin, there was somewhat of that guarantee that you pay your dues, you stay loyal, you give your time, you put your time in at work. Eventually you're going to get a promotion. I don't know that that's the case here with Matt Campbell. Loyalty is certainly a factor. I've heard that a ton. Matt Campbell is certainly a proponent of loyalty, but it's not going to be, I think there is a different level to it with James Franklin, because we did see that where there was an over-reliance on veterans. Do you want me to start naming them? Again, there was, when they should have went with Katron Allen 100%, they still had a 50-50 split with Nicholas Singleton. I'm not saying that you could never go back to Singleton, but it was that, well, Singleton was there for the 4 years and put in his time, so he's basically due snaps. Liam Clifford, kind of the same thing, that they deserve snaps simply because they were veterans and they stuck around. And Matt Campbell does not buy into that thinking. But that's how it's supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be organic competition where the best of the best play, or you divvy up the snaps based on who deserves them. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. Divvy up the percentages based on what you have. Is Quincy Porter a real possibility? I would give it a slim possibility because Penn State's not going to be the only school that targets him. So I don't have a guarantee. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have a projection. It is a cautiously optimistic situation that Penn State is going to make a push for him. That's the understanding, is that Penn State's already apparently following on social media, right? All the social media buzz. They are going to try. It doesn't mean that they're going to land him, but he's from New Jersey. Penn State has done a better job. They still have New Jersey connections in the recruitment department. So they were close the first time around, but did James Franklin play a factor into that? He's certainly not going to Virginia Tech. I can tell you that much. But they are going to try to go after Quincy Porter. I like this comment. Peoples is my family. When I say y'all are getting the best on and off the field, trust me, y'all have a star. Can't wait to be in Happy Valley. We are. And P.S., he loves Saquon. That's the scouting report you need right there. I appreciate the comment. Thank you so much for adding context to the conversation, because it gives personality to some of the players that we see, right? We're talking about what James Peoples can do for Penn State as a player. Who is he like on the field? What are his stats? What's his responsibility going to be? And I appreciate that comment a ton, because it gives us context and gives us an insight as far as who he is as a person and what he's going. I like somebody that, if he looks up to Saquon, like, come on, he already fits in, right? Saquon's I didn't get to see any, Kajana Carter, right? That was before my time, right? All the, obviously, Capoletti, but Saquon, in my opinion, is definitely the best running back that I've seen at Penn State, him and Larry Johnson. So that ages me. That puts me right in that group. Run the ball, 13-14 personnel, and those tight ends into a makeshift power I formation. That's going to be the staple. You play into your strengths. It's really not that complicated. If you have 3 tight ends and you trust the depth behind them, you can run 13 personnel. Taylor Mauser, Penn State's offensive coordinator, has run 13 and 14 personnel before. You don't want 14 personnel to be your regular formation, right? But I'm fully expecting, again, Burkle and Bramer at Iowa State were co-starters. They ran a ton of 12 personnel. That is going to be Penn State's base. 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers. I'm hoping they use 2 running backs at times, but you'll see a lot of 12 personnel. Because right now, the way that the rotation's setting up, Rapplier and Bramer would be your first 2 tight ends on the field. You would have Chase Sowell and Kobe Howard on the outside, and you would rotate in Brett Eskelson. But I'm really hoping you can get somebody like Rico Scott or Quincy Porter into the rotation. That's the idea, right? That's the hope. That's going to be tough, though. That's going to be tough. Rasheem Biles, Pitt linebacker, is still out there. 4-star, 93 rating. That's a guy that's a plug and play. Now, I don't know much about him. I'm glad you suggested him, but I'm going to be privy to any linebacker that's proven they can play ball. There's the I'm blanking on his name at the moment, but Tony Rojas, even before Amari Campbell, this was the hint we should have taken. Was Tony Rojas already started outwardly recruiting on social media for the Cal linebacker that was apparently rumored to hit the portal, and now he has hit the portal. Was Tony Rojas's recruitment enough, right? Or because it got Amari Campbell to Penn State for a season, or was that just a Hail Mary type of deal? But it makes sense now, because Amari Campbell hasn't made a decision yet. Why is Tony Rojas reaching out to a Cal linebacker? I'll tell you what, though, Danton Lynn, Ikaika Malloy, 2 California connections. Not ruling it out. I don't think it's impossible to potentially get him. Dejuan Lane Hurts, Tyseer Denmark, not so much. Accurate. If you want to sum it all up there, Dejuan Lane could have been no lower than a co-starter. Denmark would have had to work his way into the rotation. I still saw the upside there. I saw enough at practice, and there was enough positive chatter from whether it was at the time Marcus Hagans or James Franklin. I know they're not there anymore, but still, they don't go out of their way on accident to praise a player that's not playing. Maybe they do. I don't know why you would do that unprovoked, but I think there unfortunately were a lot of ulterior motives for how the depth chart went this season, because I do think that Tyseer Denmark should have been somebody that was in the rotation. But even down the stretch, Terry Smith, when he took over, you saw more of Kobe Howard. You didn't see a lot of Tyseer Denmark. Now, did we? Oh, well, there we go. So Rico Scott is back to Bama. He's not even in the portal anymore. There we go. See, that's why we have the live show, because the comments help keep us on the right path. That's disappointing, because I thought Rico Scott being a Harrisburg, so that was a play to get more NIL, more guarantees. That's all that was. That was basically a threat. I'm going to go into the portal. Watch me. Oh, I got a new NIL deal. I'm back at Alabama. Marcus Neal is definitely a stud. I agree with that wholeheartedly. One of the faces of your defense next season, if you're Penn State. What defense are we running next year? 4-2-5, 4-3-4, everything. Everything. You will see 3-4, because that's what Danton Lynn's base defense was at USC. You will see odd man fronts. You will see a 3-4. You could characterize it as a 5-2. 4-2-5, 4-3, whatever they need to run. And I keep saying that there's leverage in that. There's power in that, because it'll confuse opposing offenses. So, yep, we got it in the comments there. Multiple defense, 4-2-5, nickel, 3-3-5, 3-5-3. You'll see. I don't know that they have the linebacker depth to do the 3-5-3. I'm anticipating 5-2 formations, 3-4, definitely a 3-4, 4-2-5 hybrid as the base, and then whatever variations you can run out of that. You will see a lot of you will see a lot of secondary. You will see 3-3-5 formations for sure, definitely, because the secondary is the strength. Front seven is the liability at this point, but that can change. Yep, Quincy Porter is in the portal now. And I also saw that Specka to Purdue. Yes. Anthony Specka is transferred to Purdue. Jeff Exner is going to transfer. He was a 4-star wide receiver that committed to Penn State last year. Is headed to Virginia Tech. I got to wrap this up. I got to go record another episode for the next few days, but I appreciate everybody joining me on the live show here. But I think this is a great way to kind of recap the day. I think most of you would agree that we can keep doing these live shows because they're justified with all the portal moves, whether additions or subtractions. This is a great way to recap all of the movement for Penn State, and there's going to be plenty more. Portal's just getting started, man. My name is Zach Seyko. I'm the host of Locked On Nittany Lions. As always, we do this daily. We have daily episodes around your favorite Penn State sports team. So if you are new to the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you so much for joining me on another live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions.